Well, thanks for staying with us on the program this morning. Our guest is the president of the Nigerian Nexus and a social commentator who joins us live in our studio to review headlines as published on the front pages. In person of Patriot Desmond, Patriot Fowobi. Good morning to you, Patriot, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Bito, and good morning, Nigeria. It's nice to be in the studio once again.
Now, our first place to start is over the weekend. There was an event at the Nigeria House in New York where the United Nations Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed congratulated President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Nigerians on the occasion of the nation's 65th independence anniversary. She also seized the opportunity to ask Nigerians to rally behind President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to rebuild the nation, noting that at no point has she heard the president complain about the backlog of burdens inherited from successive governments. I'd like to get your thoughts on Amina Mohammed's message to Nigerians on the occasion of our 65th independence anniversary.
Interesting there. If you look at the country, you realized that a lot of people actually understood where the problem is coming from. And it is not just something that you have to blame the president for some of the woes we have experienced in our economy and the front or back in our political journey. The truth is that every sane Nigerian and anyone who understood the evolution and where we are coming from, where we are and where we are going to, you would not blatantly blame the president for any of the woes, the economic woes that we are experiencing in the country. So just like Amina Mohammed had put it, you see, you don't keep blaming the ex-president, successive governments, if you're really serious and ready to work. Because a lot of us remember during the electioneering when the president was moving from one state to the other in campaigning for votes, he pledged and promised that he's going to revamp our economy. He said he has the solution and is bringing renewed hope. You're not campaigning because you just want to be a president. You're campaigning because you want to solve the problems of Nigerians. And when you arrive or upon the success at the poll and you are sworn in, you're supposed to kickstart the journey of recovery of the country's economy rather than complaining. So Asiwaju understood that and he has hit the ground running, though not all his policies actually are friendly to the people at this initial stage. Everybody is crying, everybody is affected. No one is left out, whether you're rich, you're poor, whether employed or unemployed or self-employed. The policies of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu actually affected and instigated a change in our social life.
Some of the opposition parties on the policy direction have accused the government of being more revenue generating oriented than welfare oriented. How true is that? And which of the policies stands out as one of the best so far in your opinion?
Among all the policies of the president, I think the subsidy remover is actually one of the best policies of the president. The only challenge is that we do not have programs that would coaching the effect of the change that is orchestrated by the remover of subsidy. And that effect was actually harsh on the people, changing the lives, changing the way we do things, because the kind of economy we practice in this country is mono economy, which is not supposed to be. Everything we do in the part of this world depends or evolve around petroleum. So the suspension of subsidy or the removal of subsidy, that pronouncement on the 29th of May, the year 2023, changed the dynamics. The cost of transportation, the cost of services, the cost of goods skyrocketed, increased drastically, and that affected everybody. And what we have been doing between that time and now is adjusting to the new life. just like the president and some people believed that we have not been saving enough. We are eating or mortgaging our future with the kind of policies that we've been practicing in this part of the world, where we do not inculcate the culture and the habit of saving as a country. Whatever comes into the purse is distributed to the state, and the state is actually taking the cost, the recurrent expenditure to actually run the states, the 36 states, is actually more than what is being generated. And that is the reason why the president took certain steps like the subsidy removal. And from what I am seeing, I think even the opposition party and every well-meaning Nigerian can see vividly, clearly, that there have been some gains from this subsidy removal. For example, our foreign reserve has increased drastically. We now have enough money in our purse. And there are some debts also that the president has been able to pay. You see, why? You know, we need to understand governance. Despite the fact that this government is making so much effort in terms of paying off some of our debts, they are still taking some loans. It is normal. It is natural. There are some loan that is necessary and compulsory. You have to take it. If you don't take it, you're only shooting yourself as a country on the foot. So some people may say that you claim you're making more money. Where is the rationale? Where is the logic? Where is the balance between you claiming to have more money now from the subsidy removal and still jetting out to Brazil, jetting out to France, jetting out to Swiss to get more loan? There are some loans that is as a grant. And this grant is for certain categories of countries, like the third world countries, or this type of countries, or country that is going through some of these challenges or that challenges, power challenge, health challenge, certain vaccines and all that. So those kind of loan, they are just like free food on the table. They are not loan money you pay back immediately, and some of them do not have anything to service them. There's loan like that. There are loans that requires that you have to service them. You have to pay. You have
the moratorium on those loans.
On those loans. But there are some that comes in as a grant to solve certain problems, social problems, structural problems in the world.
Now let's take it from this angle. This rallying call to Nigerians seems to be broad. Yeah. The best way to get it, since we are practicing the federalism, is the rallying call to the federal government by state governors supporting, and by extension, the minister of the FCT. I was just looking at one of the prominent headlines this morning, Serap giving a 7-day ultimatum to governors and the FCT minister to explain where the 14 trillion naira subsidy saving cuts have gone to. You also mentioned it in alluding to the fact that it's one of the gains of subsidy removal. Yeah. In your opinion, would you say that the states have been on their game in using subsidy cuts to ensure that Nigerians do not feel the harsh effects of President Bola Tinubu's policies?
That is where the problem lies. The real problem is not about the savings or the excess money that is now being distributed among states of the federation. If you check back facts and history, you will realize that before now there are states that gets up to maybe 3 billion, 6 billion, thereabouts. And because of this subsidy removal and the gains of the subsidy in terms of the savings of the federal government, the money that comes into the federation account, means that the state has more money, including the FCT. But the challenge is that if you just pause, the level of development in the state is not commensurate with the level of money that is being distributed to them. You see that about a year ago, it took the president and the ministry, the Ministry of Finance, as well as the Accountant General of the Federation, to educate Nigerians and release a memo of the certain amount of money that had been distributed to state. And there was no living evidence of such money in the state. That was when our state government start sitting uprightly. So it shouldn't be like that. There has to be complementary effort from the state government. And a lot of states, if you go to some states, you give them kudos, while some states requires a knock, and nobody is giving them a knock. Everybody is pointing attention at federal government, and that is not ideal way to grow the country. The federal government is just one unit. And if you talk about states, we have about 36 states, including FCT, to make it 37. Now, that is just about 37 units. Now, beyond the 37 units, we also have about 774 local governments that if you really want an improved economy and improved welfare, social welfare to the people, you don't just focus on the president. The president has done perfectly. And let me tell you something. The federal government of Nigeria actually requires a lot of kudos. Have interacted and have interrelated with states as well as with the federal government. And I can tell you that the kind of governance we receive from the national, you don't get it anywhere in the state. Meanwhile, the state is actually richer than the federal government. Because when the federal government gets this money, the only time the federal government is richer than the state is at the receiving point where the money comes into the federation account. But from the point this money is being distributed to states, it means that the states and the local government is actually richer than the federal government. But you don't see governance. Nobody demands for accountability. Nobody questions state government. And everybody SERAP. That is why I will go back to SERAP. You see, SERAP is not just a police to the federal government. SERAP is a civil group that is seeking for accountability and financial prudency from people elected or appointed. Why have they limit their activities to only the federal government? Why not? Well, I wouldn't blame SERAC, but SERAC should do better, and every other organizations, civic organizations in the country, like Transparency International, Amnesty International, all these things, should also focus and put some pressure on state government from the south to the north. That is when we can begin to see the renewed hope mantra of this president. Otherwise, we'll just be complaining, and it is not good for us alone to be complaining. It is not good, because at the end of the day, when you complain, you don't improve. Those complaints we see on the TV does not improve the lots of our people.
Now, moving on to another issue in the news this morning, it's the issue of a $92 billion lithium rush. Now, whilst the policies of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and also creating a ministry of mines with a minister saddling that to harmonize and tap into the resources is the responsibility of states as well. We're told by the Vanguard this morning that Nasarawa State is leading in terms of domestic investor-friendly policies, whilst miners are demanding more of such policies across Nigeria. Often at times, the focus has always been on oil. But with the abundance of natural and mineral resources littered across Nigeria, lithium in particular, with the potentials to be an alternative energy source in terms of solar energies and batteries powered by lithium, cannot be overemphasized. $92 billion lithium rush. And it almost seems as though it's the foreign miners that are enjoying the largesse. What can the government do in partnership with the federal government to ensure that there's more domestic investments attracted to this sector?
I've seen a lot of conferences within and outside the country on how they can maximize the exploration of some of these mineral resources, but it only ends in that four walls of the conference room. You see, government spends millions traveling out to see how things is being done, but it's not, I don't know the forces behind it being replicated back home, and that is the challenge. You're talking about mineral resources. What about the water resources? What about other aspects of our life? You see, people used to say Nigeria is the giant of Africa. It's not on paper. It is evidently clear because of the abundance of some of the resources that God has given to us, not just human resources here. I'm talking about solid minerals, natural resources that are untapped. Now, you can't convert this to wealth. So a lot of people will not agree with you when you say Nigeria is the giant of Africa. A lot of people will not agree with you because when you say we are a wealthy nation, Nigeria is rich, people are not seeing the wealth because we lack the technicality, we lack the innovations, this know-how to convert these natural resources into wealth. And that has been a generational problem. So I expect that this government should invest more. And that is why we are looking at our education sector. We are looking at exchange linkages programs. It's not about traveling overseas for tourism. It's not about going there to see what is good. Behind those fanciful bliss you see around or on the street overseas are great minds that convert raw materials into those finished goods that you see on the street. And that is where we are missing. We are really missing in this country. We're churning out millions of thousands of graduates, and we are not giving them the technology. You can't give what you don't have. Like, I was reading a book and I read from a particular chapter that Nigeria is a country where there are golds, dollars lingering around on the ground, on the floor. And yet Nigerians are not seeing it because they lack the know-how to convert those resources into wealth. And that is where the federal government needs to intensify effort from our curriculum. Our curriculum should focus, first of all, understanding our cultural dynamism, understand what God has given to us in this part of the world. And then, if we do not have the knowledge, we can import this technology to educate our people on how they can convert these resources into wealth. And that is where we are having the missing dot.
There's another debate on the role of banditry, especially with the availability of certain mineral resources in states, saying that you can tie a correlation between insecurity in some states to the availability of these mineral resources. Yeah. And there's also the role of illegal mining.
Yes.
It's not as though there are no mining laws governing this. The tenancy rate on the acquisition of certificates as well has also been some sort of debate. With these factors noted, how does the government arrest this situation?
Well, it's just about improving on your network and your security architecture. Every good thing always have its disadvantage. There is nothing that is good that does not have its disadvantage. The mining sector, in as much as there has to be technology that must be shared among thousands of our people on the safety of mining, as well as safety of conversion and usage, and even the resources that emanated or that comes out from these activities, mining activities and exportation, needs to be well channeled. And that is where our laws and our policies needs to guide the process from A to Z. We need to understand who should mine. How do you extract miners? How do you certify miners? How do you ensure that those who are mining have what it takes and they are put in a particular network, properly regulated, that nothing is coming out of those circles unless you have a certificate to do that business. So that is why you need to curb some excesses. You don't give them free hand. A lot of mining activities going on in this country. Some people even mine products and materials they do not know the end result of. They do not know what it will yield or what it can be converted to or what it can be used for. And you cannot mine, you cannot be doing this because there are certain materials you can mine here that can be used for improvised devices that are very, very dangerous to human health. And then if you are not properly guiding this sector, it can also expose a lot of Nigerians into danger. And that is why the federal government needs to equip the ministry with not just giving papers, because what I see the ministry do most times is paper. When I say paper, that is license. Now, beyond giving licenses about on the monitoring, there has to be team. There has to be people that monitor, just like we have people that monitors our oil exploration. I know Nigeria is vast, but we should create a way, whether technology or certain,
But there's NITI, the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative.
but they've not been able to curb the activities of illegal miners, and even the rebate or the proceed that comes from the mining has been used in some part of this world to prosecute conflict against by non-state actors. Non-state actors have been involved in the mining, in the exploration of some of these things, and they are using the money to sponsor activities that is against
The Nigerian
the
state.
Nigerian state, and that is where the ministry and other sector needs to improve on.
Now, let's also pick up another issue, and it borders on energy security. Whilst we talk about lithium and the potentials to translate into renewable energy for Nigerians, 92 billion naira lithium rush, with miners demanding more domestic investor-friendly policies, the price of cooking gas under the watch of Nigerians has also skyrocketed. Reported that for a kilogram of cooking gas across Nigeria, it's on the average of 2,200 naira. Last I checked, it was 1,200, 1,300, depending on states. What do you make of this at the point when people are projecting that the economy is stabilizing and prices of things should be going down?
You see, that's where people need to understand that there are certain products in this country that we do not have 100% control of the pricing. One of it is petroleum and materials surrounding it. You see, this cooking gas, the last time I checked too, I think about a month ago, was for 1,100. In some places, even 900 is less than 1,000. And then seeing the price right now going up and down, those are the effects of the market, liberalization of the market. You see, there are certain products that we do not have 100% control of the pricing. It actually falls under international pricing template. And that means when the price of petroleum or price of crude increase at the international level due to certain factor, maybe war or other factors or any other factor, it will trickle down to affect the cost of these materials in the country. And the only way to guide against this is when the country or the citizen of Nigeria or investors invest more in that product or in that sector locally. We need more investor. It is when we have more investors in that field that would affect us positively, that this international price template would not have so much effect on our pricing. And that is where the problem lies. Yes, the market is the Nigeria economy, and inflation is actually reducing, is coming down. The economy is stabilizing, but there are certain products that we do not have 100% control of, and part of those products is the cooking gas.
Now, whilst I agree with you, there's also a report from Budget that in the last 4 years, Nigeria has fled over 817.6 billion standard cubic feet of gas, which is more than enough to power 10,000 homes in a year. This culture of gas flaring has been around with us since the exploration of oil began in Nigeria. Why is it that despite the lip service paid to harnessing our gas potentials, up until now, we have not been able to translate this flare gas into powering Nigerian homes?
It requires a lot of investment. It's not just about having these resources. It's about what other technologies do you require? Do we have other things it takes to convert this into energy? The answer is no. The federal government has not invested so much in that regard. And that is why it is impossible for us to utilize this gas that is being flared or wasted in generating electricity. So it's all about you have to look at the scale of preference as a country. What our immediate needs, because these things requires massive investors. It requires a lot of resources to build or to put in place the infrastructure as well as the technology to convert this thing. It's not just about, it's not like a case where you have a generator set somewhere and then all you just needed to do is to convert or to direct or channel this gas into the generator set. We need the plant to generate this electricity, but we do not, at the moment, we do not have them because it requires a lot of investment. It is not what an individual president or country can do. You need the help of investors to be able to achieve that. Just like the petroleum, the oil sector, the petroleum industry, it took the intervention of Dangote after 50-something years of the failure of NNPC before we can now say we now refine petroleum in this country. The same thing is applicable. So it is not just about the gas. So when you talk about the gas, what are the supporting infrastructure to be able to convert this wasted gas into useful energy that can deliver the country from this blackout that has affected cost of production? You see, one thing that the country is in need of is electricity, power generation. And we have to look at the alternatives way of achieving that away from the gas to burn.
Now, I would like to ask on the role of the government, and I'd like to cite some instances. In 2008, President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua of blessed memory, and in 2011, the then President Goodluck Jonathan all missed out on the deadline to institute the law that was, brought about by a 2005 Federal High Court judgment that prohibited gas flaring and mandated that penalties be set. These two successive precedents were unable to append their signatures so that it will become law. And even the Petroleum Industry Act of 2021 gave room that gas can be flared for feasibility studies, but was supposed to also put a penalty if that flaring continues for more than 2 to 5 years. With all these timelines that have passed, do you think that the current government will be able to work in synergy with the National Assembly to ensure that some of the oil majors that are still in this habit find a way to take up the responsibility as mandated by law?
You see, you cannot give what you don't have, and that is the problem. You see, government is not something you do. You don't take certain decisions based on emotions. You have to look at the facts available. You have to look at the practicability of some of those bills. You can otherwise, you're going to shut your door against investors. And that is why we are talking about the flexibility of doing business in the country. We must make it appealing to investors. You can't blame Yar'Adua. You can't blame the administration of Jonathan. You can't even blame the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. This is why we say to make Nigeria great is a collective responsibility from the private and from the public and the private sector combined. And even the citizens, our attitude, do you know, some of the things we do on social media can also make or mar some of investors to come and take up this responsibility.
But Patriot Desmond, the world has agreed with a goal of 2030 to end gas flaring. And this is 2025, 5 years to that goal. I agree the role of partnership across board, not just the government. But if you have a global goal that says everyone should commit to ending gas flaring by 2030 and 5 years to that goal, there are still weak penalties. Regulatory energy agencies like NUPRC and the Nigerian Midstream Regulatory Commission do not have strict penalties for those who still participate in this flaring. Do you see us achieving this goal in the next 5 years?
Well, before I talk to that your question, first of all, I want you to know that there have been a lot of goals that have been set that is
and we keep
ambiguous,
shifting the
ambiguous because you do not have what it takes to achieve those goals. You don't just set goals. You support the actualization of those goals. You see, part of the problem we have is this global world, this global village. You see, we've been talking about the influence of foreign we call it neo-colonialism.
But when you talk about the MDGs and SDGs,
I don't think it's a factor. Do you know how many goals? Do you know how many? It's not just MDGs. I've grew up to see a lot of goals, even set by United Nations, set by the Leagues of Nations, AU, African Union, and all that. Until date, it is just like a motivation. There are no laws that guide that you must achieve those goals. There are no laws. It is just like coming together to set a goals that for yourself, that at the end of this 2025, you want to build your own home. You want to have your own car. You want to have a company. It's just normal goals. Now, to achieve,
so that it will translate to a better quality of life.
So that
I know that is where this conversation is coming from, because if Nigerians are complaining of having to buy gas at 2,200 per kilogram when there's alternatives to harness this gas and even make it cheaper.
Let me just conclude by saying that you set the goals that you want to achieve this and you do not have a job. You set a goal for yourself and you do not have what it takes to achieve those goals. And then you have a bigger brother that have more than enough to set you up. You have a bigger brother. I'm just letting you understand the global politics played by United Nations Security Council, as well as some other stratas of these treaties and this global union and all that. This lack of sincerity. You see, I have seen where Bill Gates, an individual, is taking responsibility that is meant to be taken by group of nations. And then you're now telling me that it would amount into the actualization of some of these goals at the end. It will not. Meanwhile, the world system, the system in this world, do you know that all the problems we are having in this world is man-made and man-created because of ego and ID? All the problems. I'm a student of peace studies and I've done a lot of research on the causes of conflict and causes of hardship and why certain governments were influenced to take certain policies. You have heard about the case of President Babangida, where he was asked to devalue the naira and pressured. Abacha was pressured, Obasanjo was pressured, even Goodluck Ebele Jonathan was pressured by these organizations, these global organizations. Now, you would ask yourself a question: what is the intent? What are they looking for? What do they want to achieve? I've read a lot of documentary on how some groups of nations have inflicted pains on other nations. Look at what is happening in Burkina Faso. Look at what is happening in some African countries. Look at Mali. Look at Senegal. Look at some of these African countries for you to understand what I'm trying to say. We've talked about the role that this neo-colonialism is playing on the developing nation. Now, let me tell you, you see, if you go outside the shore of Africa, you find out that some of these countries in the world, they are actually beautiful, to be in all sincerity. They have good standard of life. And guess what? If you dig deep, you realize that what you see as wealth in these countries are actually wealth that are generated from Africa resources. You are talking about industrialization. Is Africa an industrialized nation? No, Africa is not industrialized. But the raw materials used by this industrialized nation actually comes from, even till date, from Africa. Now, the question you ask yourself: what stops these super countries, this wealthy country, of trying to expand the wealth to these African countries by implanting some of this technology? Why take this technology and shield it out of Africa? Why not bring this technology to Africa so that the wealth can be spread and become a shared prosperity for the people of this world? Those are the politics. And that is why when you set goals, when you come together as nations, you set goals, and you are not helping one another by certain policies, change of policies and change of belief that somebody is bigger and somebody is smaller. And then you will realize that this world is actually a beautiful place to live if only there is love, if only there is an understanding that we all are equal, irrespective of our colors, irrespective of our race. Some of the things we talked about, because some of the problems we're having in Africa, some of the problem we're having in Nigeria, it is not Nigeria really created. It is not local problem. They are foreign problem
created for Nigeria,
that finds their way into the life of the Nigerian people and now affected our policies.
Now, in concluding, let's look at one Nigerian problem, and it's the problem of inflation. For the fifth consecutive month since the nation rebased her GDP in January, and it saw inflation drop from 34.8% In the month of August, they dropped to 21.48%. Now, experts are projecting that a further drop in inflation is expected at the end of the month of September, whilst we're waiting for the National Bureau of Statistics to release her data. These experts are projecting that it will drop to 18.46%. However, like we saw for the price of cooking gas, it has not necessarily translated to a reduction in food inflation. But headline inflation for the fifth consecutive year looking on a downward decline. What do you make of this? Many have called it cosmetic. Many have said it would begin to bear its fruit in some time. So what's your position?
Let me tell you, the president was interviewed in one of those interviews, and he was giving an analogy and a sample of how Nigerians can be, can be greedy. And he said, don't worry, that market force will force them to bring the cost of their goods downward, that it's just a matter of time. Now, back to what you are saying. The problem truly is that these figures are actually true. It is sincere. It is not cosmetics. What you are seeing here are facts, but it does not translate into the everyday life of Nigerians because of attitude. Attitude of Nigerians. You see that Nigerians, especially in the entrepreneurial world, do not really understand the concept of adding value rather than making profit. They prefer to make profit rather than imparting the system and the society. You see, yes, every businessman set up his or her business to make profit. But first, you must have an environment, a safe environment, for you to be able to do the business in the first place. And it is this thing that is missing in our world. A lot of orientation needs to go in there. There are people who genuinely saw that there have been decline in the cost of purchasing or getting a particular service or product from the major pool. But downward there, they refuse deliberately, individualistically, to allow this reduction or declination to go out there to create a ripple effect on the people. So that is where we need to speak to the conscience of the Nigerian people. For example, when there was inflation, you got a particular product at 10 naira. And then at the international price, because of the declination in this inflation, you're now getting it for 2 naira, and you're still selling it as if you're getting it for 10 naira. What do you describe that? That is greed. Greed is one of the reasons why you are not seeing the effect of the declination of this inflation in our environment. Truly, if you go to the market, on paper, you see that the prices or things, inflation means that the high price of product and services. Now, when we say declination, it means that it's coming down. And this figure should naturally translate into better life for the people. When you see on paper that there is decline, the thing is dropping from 38 to 37, and you are not seeing the changes. So it will now make no sense to the people. A lot of people will not be able to relate to what the government is doing. So when the government say that they're actually improving, there is improvement in governance, the people will not understand it because you are only having this improvement on paper and on TV. And that is why the government and the people needs to understand that it is a joint project to achieve a better Nigeria.
All right, in closing, the role of the central bank, the experts are also forecasting. We saw the marginal decrease in the MPC rates in the month of August. Ahead of November's MPC meeting, there are more speculations that the CBN owes it to making capital available and also reducing interest rates by decreasing even further. Do you think that the Oluyemi Cardoso-led CBN would yield to these speculations?
I think it's necessary because a lot of people in this country have actually pressured and the CBN to, although there is a reason for some of these things, but I believe that Cardoso will yield this time around because the president is on the mandate to ensure that whatever he will do now to ease the pain of the masses, they had to take it up. You see, I've watched the president is even more concerned because I don't know whether it's because of politics. I don't know whether it's because of 2027. But I see that the president is interested, even the ministries, they are interested in seeing that the Nigerian people have quality of life through policy influence, influencing certain policies and ensuring that pass directive and all that to ensure that the people have a better life. So I expect the Cardoso-led CBN leadership to do something on that.
Well, I must thank you, Patriot Desmond, for lending your thoughts and opinions to the issues discussed this morning. We appreciate you.
The pleasure is mine.
We'll take a break. Our next guest will join us and we'll talk more on the state of affairs across Nigeria as it concerns security. With increased banditry and terrorism, some retired generals are backing a declaration of state of emergency to curb the situation. On the other hand, the political back and forth between the APC and the ADC continues, with the position of Labour Party's 2023 presidential candidate, Mr. Peter Obi, drawing concerns amongst the rank of the ADC as it concerns his ambitions. These are on the scorecard to be discussed after the break. Stay with us.